Hello, everyone around the world. Welcome. Bienvenidos, que quiero decirte, to Coloring My Way Across the Globe. I'm your host, Lauren Battistini, color consultant, artist, language learner, and world traveler. Join me each week as I chronicle the most colorful people, places, and experiences I encounter off the beaten path, both near and far. So, let's go. Vámonos, que pame. Welcome back, colorful friends. I have the privilege of interviewing today one of my dearest friends and now international travel buddies, Julie Lehmann. Julie is a native Texan, co-owner of a title company, entrepreneur, marketer, avid reader, curious learner, explorer, and definitely a lover of great coffee shops. Julie, welcome to Coloring My Way Across the Globe.
Thank you, Lauren. Super excited to be here.
Very happy to have you. This is one of the interviews I've been looking forward to for a very long time. Let's dig right in. A lot of the listeners don't know that you and I just got back a few months ago from a very amazing trip that we'll talk all about. So, first off, what made you choose to take your first ever international trip to Greece with me?
So one of my New Year's resolutions last year was to have more fun. And we were sitting in the hot tub one night chatting, and you told me Greece, and I'm like, how fun would that be to be spontaneous and just book a flight and go with you?
Well, and I have to say something that a lot of my friends, God bless all of them, they'll also say things like that. Oh, I would love to go with you sometime when you're traveling. It'd be so great. But because of family obligations, work obligations, very few people are really able to do that. So when you said that to me with your busy, loaded schedule and, you know, your daughter's school schedule and everything else you had going on, I was so surprised, just so pleasantly surprised. But
I mean, really, I just needed to get my passport, which I did.
And you did it. It came in at the last minute, but you made it happen. You expedited it. So for my listeners, Julie and I took a trip to Greece. We were there together for about a week. I stayed on an additional 4 weeks. A lot of you might know that. But first we flew into Athens, and then we took a ferry to the island of Spetses, Greece, where we were for a week. So we're going to be talking about our experience there. So in Spetses and the whole experience, what did you love most about the experience?
I'm going to say one of my most favorite thing was the beauty all around us. And just seeing all the different, meeting new people, the culture there, which was all new to me. Having amazing food, but just everywhere we went was pretty, from the flowers to the architecture to the water. I mean, there was beauty around, and I felt like at peace. As soon as we stepped on the island, all life worries went away.
And even the food, well, you've got some food allergies, and we can talk about that in a minute or not, but you do have some dietary restrictions. And one of the concerns was, am I going to be able to eat the food here? How processed is it? But I think so
I have a gluten allergy. Well, I'm gluten, dairy, and egg free. But I tried bread there, and you were nervous because you're like, we're far away. Do you have meds with you? And I'm like, let me just taste this day, see if I have a reaction. And I didn't. So I didn't eat the bread every day, but I did eat it a few times, and I didn't have any reactions to it.
The food was fresh. Preservatives really aren't used. It's homemade, fresh food. It's locally produced. And so, yeah, I think that was good.
Yeah, and I think the lady that we stayed with was very accommodating to make sure that I had breakfast and everything as well, which made a difference.
And listeners, you all will have heard on another episode, I interviewed the owner of the guest house where we stayed. We stayed at Seven Islands Guest House, and one of the owners is Tonya Vatikiotis, and Tonya is the one who got us set up with everything from breakfast items to instructions, maps, and even got us set up on a sailing cruise that we did one day. So, speaking of things to do in Spetses, tell me from your perspective, what are the things that you enjoy doing the most there?
I mean, I definitely think our exploring around the island, renting a little ATV, was great because we got to see all the hills, see all the various beaches that we could get to, which was just amazing. Probably my favorite thing was the sailboat, though. I mean, that was unbelievable to be able to go around the island, and you who have a fear of small spaces, but we went into the cave and swam into the cave. I mean, that was unbelievable.
It was, and you had
I took my phone with me.
Your phone, you did some underwater photography. So I would agree with you. My favorite excursion of the trip was when we took the all-day sailing cruise. And you guys, I will actually include the gentleman's information for you in the description of this podcast episode. His name is Lefteris, and he was very knowledgeable. He's native to Spetses. He owns a couple of different boats. He does fishing excursions, and then he does tours around the island for, vacationers like myself, like ourselves. And it was really well worth the money, and he's very knowledgeable, did a great job. So I'll make sure I include his information.
I mean, it was great. He told us the history of different stuff of the island, which was, we'd heard a lot already, meeting people, but that was neat. So...
Well, and I'll tell you something, having myself traveled to a few different Greek islands, Spetses is every island is unique, okay? But what I found unique about Spetses is it's covered in green, so much greenery, so many pine trees. That was a little unexpected for me, but it's what they're known for. So that was one of the experiences. Also the food.
The food was unbelievable.
Remember those little sweet treats that were the almond sugary
the little
treats?
almond butter cookies that I could have eaten.
And they were powdered.
Yes.
Well, I want to let you know that I did some research and I looked back at our both receipts as well as some pictures, and I found the place, and we're going to order some of those sweets soon. I'll order some for us.
I'll just take a dozen because
yeah,
I bought some for the flight back, and they didn't even make it to the airport after my car ride back.
We'll definitely have to order some. Okay, so let's talk wardrobe and let's talk travel styles, but let's first talk wardrobe. And I say this because it's interesting when you travel with a friend. Everyone has his or her own style, and you want your styles to a degree mesh a little bit on a trip because you're doing things together the whole time, right? So talk to me about what your wardrobe was like, what your packing essentials were.
I mean, obviously I overpack way more than you do. You've got to be the most light packer ever, which I packed light for me, which was still heavier than you. Next time I'll be better. I feel like, the linen pants and tank tops and stuff or sundresses were perfect. And then wearing sneakers because we walked everywhere because there was no cars on the island. And so comfortable shoes getting everywhere was big. And it wasn't like hot, but it wasn't like cold. So just something comfortable and breezy.
And you had a few layered pieces too. I feel like you had a couple of lightweight sweat. You had a lightweight jacket and you had a lightweight sweater. I feel like.
Yeah.
But your wardrobe looked really nice, and I did help you.
You did come help me beforehand.
I did. We laid everything out on your bed, and I helped you develop a color palette, and you stick more to neutral colors than I do. So yes. I made you add a little bit of color in there.
Yes.
And I think you did a really good job. So, what did you pack that turned out for you to be an absolute essential of the things that you packed?
I wore one pair of linen pants several times would probably be it. And then I had one black sundress that I wore multiple times.
I'd say for me, the one travel essential that I'm so happy I packed, I had a pair of those brown sandals.
Oh, yes.
That had nice tread on the bottom, and they were very comfortable to walk in, and they didn't look dorky. They still looked stylish. And I wore them the entire 5 weeks I was in Greece.
So you wore those shoes, and I wore sneakers more.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any that I could have walked as much as we walked.
We were just walking all the time.
Yeah.
And talking about off the beaten path, where we stayed, the guest house where we stayed, which I loved. It is definitely off the beaten path. It is about a 15-minute walk from the main port, and then maybe like a 5 to 6 minute walk to the old port, I think.
Right.
Something along those lines. Everything is so walkable. So walkable. Okay. Let's see. Here's a good question for you. How important is it to choose your travel companion wisely?
I think you definitely have to know who you're traveling with, and if you're sharing rooms and stuff, how you're going to cohabitate together, because that's a lot of time together. And I feel like we did really good. Like, we both are used to having our personal space, and we're both not clingy people in the sense that we have to do everything together. So like one of us would hang out in one section, go somewhere else, be like, okay, we'll meet up in a couple of hours. You go read, do whatever.
Yeah.
I went off to the beach, or you would go off to the beach, and we could do our own thing, which I think was great.
I agree with you that we have different travel styles, and even some of our maybe excursion preferences might have been different. So I like how we came together, we compromised on some things. We made sure to do activities that you wanted to do, but also activities that I want to do. For me, And then I think this is kind of funny. I think we should talk about my personality versus your personality and levels
But I think it was great before we left. You asked me, what is one thing you want to do when you get there? And kind of same with you. So we were like, okay, as we like explored and looked, I'm like, okay, this is something I want to do. So we had like key things that we both wanted to see. So we kind of saw both, which I would agree. We both loved all the things that we saw.
I also think too that you and I had conversations before the trip to figure out how we like to travel and what our preferences are. And as adults especially, I think it's important to choose your travel companion wisely, because you don't want to get stuck with someone who has a vastly different schedule than you do, or a vastly different personality, or has no flexibility whatsoever, can't go with the flow. And let's talk about how you thought it was going to be traveling with me. And you can be candid here. How you thought it was going to be traveling with me, Miss International Explorer, versus how it was at the beginning in reality. Go ahead and tell the listeners.
So I figured you were going to be this like laid back Lauren that's like going to get to the deal, and you'd be like, yeah. Not that either one of us party, but just like very chill vibe, go with the flow or whatever. Whereas you're like OCD person and like, we're going to miss our plane. We have to be here. We have to be here 2 hours before. And I'm like, okay, whatever. Let's just go. Which is funny because back here, I'm probably more scheduled than you and you're more the laid back. So I feel like we kind of flipped our roles.
I think it's hilarious that you just said that I'm laid back in any scenario. I've never been described that way, and I thank you.
I feel like you are in situations here, like work-wise or different stuff. You're a lot more laid back, where I'm a little more structured. And then as soon as when I travel, Julie, I'm like, whatever, go with the flow. It's a good time. Let me explore and learn and see.
You know, I think one of one of the reasons why I was a little bit amped up and maybe tense and nervous in the beginning is because I felt like, because I have been to Greece a couple of other times and I know my way around and I do speak some Greek, and I had planned the trip for us, I felt this sense, and you didn't make me feel this way, I just felt this but responsibility to make sure that everything was perfectly in place for both of us and that we didn't miss anything, we got to places on time. And I think had I just breathed a little bit before we got on that plane and just calmed myself down a little bit, because it took about a day or two for me to chill out and calm down.
It did. But you were nervous too because it was outside of Mexico, my first international trip. So, and also truly, we joke about this, but with your food allergies, I also knew that I was responsible to make sure that if something happened where you ate something and had, an anaphylactic reaction, that I was going to need to be your backup. I was going to need to get you to the hospital. Yes.
Thankfully, no such thing happened.
Nothing happened.
Let's shift gears for just a minute and talk about, this is the thing I noticed on the trip. You were doing a lot of documenting with your phone of landscape, just us in and around Spetses, walking around. You seem to be documenting a lot of the moments, and we would joke about it because before we would leave the room or before we would go into a restaurant or go to our next excursion, you wanted to make sure that we captured, I'll call it B-roll, video, imagery. And I kind of laughed at it at first. I thought, oh, come on, Julie, why are you doing this? But you had a reason. Tell us why you were documenting everything.
I mean, for me, it's twofold. One, I just want to, I don't know, I for some reason see I'm going to be old and have amnesia, and I want to be able to go back and look at all the beautiful memories. And that was like a once-in-a-lifetime trip that I got to go on. So I didn't want to forget anything and be able to share. But two, I love social media and doing all the different videos, and to be able to come back and be able to share with my followers and my friends and family our trip. And you could tell people how beautiful it was, but without them actually seeing it, it's totally different. So,
and here I am as I'm preparing the visuals for this podcast episode. You know that I will need to follow up with you and ask for some of your videography and photographs to utilize, because I captured some things, but not to the extent that you did. And I agree with you. I remember maybe our second or third night there that we were in our room, and I started crying, and I said that I feel like an experience like this, you had just turned 50, I had just turned 51, and an experience like this is something that we are to treasure and that we'll remember for the rest of our lives. And it was very sentimental for me, and I could recognize in the moment how special, the time was for us.
That was amazing. I will never forget that trip. So,
and my listeners, you don't know this necessarily, but Julie, not only did she want to go to Greece with me, but she also came to support me in an open water, that 3K open water swim that I swam, and she captured all of it. Also, she captured me coming in at the finish line, and that was really special to me to have one of my dearest friends there fly all halfway across the world to go and be with me in a moment. Normally I travel by myself internationally, so I would have been doing this race by myself and not have anyone necessarily cheering me on at the end, but you were there.
Yeah, it was very cool to see you. I was just thankful that I chose not to do the swim with you, since, for your listeners, I am not a very good swimmer, but have picked it up as a hobby.
But you know, when I introduced you at the beginning of the episode, I said that you were such a curious learner and an explorer, and you and I've helped you with your swimming. You took a swim lesson, and we did discuss this, and you were going to train for it, and then we discussed how for your first swim, an open water swim in a foreign country in choppy waters was really not going to be the best indoctrination into the world of open water swimming, honestly.
Yes.
We'll have you do something here locally.
And then my husband pouted. What do you mean you're going to do your first swim that we can't be there?
Well, we didn't want Corey to get upset, so we didn't want to make him mad. So I think it worked out the way it was supposed to.
I did too.
Okay, let's talk about, you have a side passion project. We mentioned earlier that you handle marketing and you are the co-owner of a title company, but as an entrepreneurial, I'll say bohemian kind of spirit, you have a side passion project. Tell us about it.
So I'm working on a few things. So I'm working on a book, and I'm creating some journals and some digital products. So I'm just trying to kind of find what my voice is going to be through that. But I feel like one of my strengths is making connections with people and kind of tying in and building relationships. And my creative is more the marketing side. So just trying to play around, see what comes up with it.
With your digital products, could you tell us a little bit about the theme of them?
So most of them would be marketing tools. So like Canva 101 or something to do like that, along that line.
Okay. And there's also a side to that. Yes, you'll have the marketing digital products, but you also have some things that are, I would say, inspirational from what I've seen.
Yes. So I feel like our world's a little dark place at times. And if I can spread a little joy and love out into the world, it means something to me to get a message from somebody saying, hey, I get online in the morning to look at your stuff to see what you did. And just trying to share some love out there. So that's like most of my planners and even my book and stuff is going to be sharing inspiration and joy.
I love that. That is so you. Another thing I've noticed about you is you are my product go-to guru when it comes to products that have to do with health, wellness, well-being, beauty. And by beauty, I mean more on the natural side. Natural hair care products, skin care products. You are really my go-to person because you do a lot of research.
Yeah, so I would say like anything that's holistic, and a lot of it's just for health reasons to get stuff, because people don't really realize that gluten's hidden in everything, and myself and my daughter both have the allergies, and just trying to be healthier. And once you start feeling better, it's really hard to take the chemicals and put them back in your body.
Oh, definitely. But you are my go-to person. I'll call you and ask you about anti-aging products or infrared lighting. And you and I when I go visit you, I feel like it's an Airbnb experience. Y'all, Julie has this room, this whole guest room, which has a sauna in it and infrared lighting, and it is literally, and don't you have lavender spray for me to rest better?
I have lavender spray on your bed, yes, which I did bring with us to Greece and sprayed our pillows down at night.
She sprayed our pillows, you guys, with lavender. She had every detail covered. It's because
I overpack, Lauren.
She does overpack, but it was like having a turn down service. I was waiting for her to put a chocolate on my pillow too, but she didn't. Darn it. Okay, you've always had an entrepreneurial spirit, and you're a business owner. We talked about that. So I like to, when I can, when I'm talking to a business owner, glean some insights for my listeners. What tips do you have, or I'm really going to use the word insight. What insight do you have for people contemplating the entrepreneurial path? Shoot straight with us.
So for me, I mean, entrepreneur has the highs and the lows, right? So you hear, particularly in social media, all the good things that happen, right? Ooh, I have the freedom, the flexibility, or whatever. But what I don't think that people talk enough about is the struggles as an entrepreneur. So whether you're a one-person entrepreneur or you have a whole team like me, we have an office or different stuff, we all have struggles. You're the one that you may not have a paycheck coming in. Or like for our case, we may pay all of our employees, but we may not get a check because we're trying to keep everything open. And I just think that you have to have the strength and the courage to be an entrepreneur, because it is not for the weak at all.
You are listening to Coloring My Way Across the Globe. Stories of the most colorful people, places, and experiences off the beaten path, both near and far. As hosted by myself, Lauren Battistini. Each week, I'll be interviewing color professionals, artists, world travelers, language learning experts, digital nomads, other entrepreneurs, creative professionals, visionaries. There's something here for everyone interested in the world around them. Keep listening, there's more to follow. Don't you also feel alongside that as an entrepreneur, you have to choose your circle of friends carefully? Meaning, you have to surround yourself with other entrepreneurs who understand this struggle and who can support you and uplift you and not be negative with you.
Yes. I feel like it's definitely, it kind of goes back when we were kids. They would say you are the 5 people you hang out with. So I definitely feel like most of my close friends are all entrepreneurs because we just understand, we can talk the struggles that somebody, and I come from a corporate background, same like you, that they don't understand kind of the different things that we go through.
And you and I, in fact, we became friends it was in 2020, right before the pandemic officially hit. We became friends. I was a panelist on a discussion that you were underwriting. You were sponsoring, marketing it. And our mutual friend Bethany introduced you and me. And we did become friends on the basis of business at first, and then bonded over entrepreneurship and coming up with new ideas, ways to market our businesses. And then a true, strong, deep, real friendship evolved from it. I mean, we traveled to Greece together, so obviously we really got to know each other. So any other insights about entrepreneurship that you want to share?
I just feel like people should try things. I think that we don't try enough things because we're afraid, and I'm guilty as this. I feel like you probably are too, just because we're afraid of failure. But you're not going to learn anything unless you try something.
I agree. And I also have learned as an entrepreneur to look at failure as we understand it, not so much as failure, but an opportunity to learn and then to pivot. I feel like entrepreneurs are constantly pivoting, constantly strategizing, constantly reworking new solutions. We really don't sit idly. We really are constantly in motion because we have to be in order to survive.
Agree.
So let's move on to some other questions. Let's switch back to Greece for a moment. Before we do that, I talked in the beginning about how you're an avid reader, and I'd like to know, share with our listeners maybe your 2 books that really influenced you this past year.
So my favorite book that I read every year is The 4 Agreements by Don Miguel. It just kind of kicks me off every year. And one of my biggest things, look it up, you can see as 4 things he goes by, but to not take it personally. And to me, that's really something that's hard because I don't know, I tend to wear my feelings on my shoulders. And so to learn that it's about them and not about me, and to really kind of hone into me. So that's a big one. One last year that I read, I'm a Matthew McConaughey fan. So his book, Green Lights, is unbelievable. He has so many tidbits of wisdom and little nuggets that I think is just very powerful.
Well, I have read the 4 Agreements before, and one of the agreements, I believe, had to do with you keeping your word to yourself.
Yes, be impeccable with your word.
Be impeccable with your word, and it did have to do with keeping your word to yourself, not just to others. Because that was an insight that I gleaned years ago when I read the book was, I've always been good about keeping my word to others, but I was not strong and resolute in keeping my word to myself.
Yeah, I feel like that's hard for people, and maybe even more for moms, women, just because we want to make sure everybody's taking care of our spouse, significant other, our kids, whatever, that we tend to forget about us. And so it's really, he says in the book, I'm trying to think how the wording is, but something I'm like, do for yourself what you would do for other people.
Most definitely.
And so, I don't know. It's powerful.
I'll have to read Green Lights. I do like Matthew McConaughey. I think he is so down to earth and approachable, and I would be curious about.
Listen to it. It's great.
I'm going to. Okay, let's circle back around to the trip to Greece, to Spetses, Greece. We have a little funny story to tell. I don't know that we can accurately really recount this. Let's do our best.
Okay.
We went way far off the beaten path. So far off the beaten path that we almost wound up toppling over into the old port/marina in Spetses.
Okay, so first of all, we rented a little, what they call a golf cart, but it's like a 3-wheel thing with a little golf cart seat thing around it, which we found out later from my husband. They stopped making them because there was too many accidents on them. But this was the end of the day. We're trying to go watch the sunset at the lighthouse again because amazing sunsets there. But we had traveled all day. Met some friends from Australia. Chatted with them.
And we drove up and down mountains, you guys. We would drive up and down all these mountains, see these beautiful picturesque views, take a ton of photos. We would stop at all these different side beaches. We made a whole day of it.
We even went off-roading a little bit.
We most certainly did go off-roading a lot bit. And by the way, I want to say something to everybody. I had to drive because, this is a tip from your Aunt Lauren here, when you're traveling internationally, it's a great idea to get an international driving permit. It's super easy to get. You can get it at a travel agency before you leave. And it enabled me to either rent a vehicle or an ATV. So because Julie didn't have her international driving permit, I did. So I had to be driving this elevated tricycle ATV hybrid. Okay, keep going, Julie. Proceed.
So we're going to see the sunset, and it's hard to describe because you can't see my hands. But just imagine we're going down an extremely steep hill, and we have to take a sharp right on a hill.
Going down the hill and take a sharp right
and
with
then
the marina in front of us.
Yeah, a marina full of boats in front of us.
In deep water.
In deep water. So, on this three-wheel thing, we go to turn right.
And we've already descended. And then we go to curve right.
And so we're on a hill turning right, which I'm sure you're thinking now, did they flip? Well, yes, we did. We fell over sideways. And luckily, both of us are kind of...
We're agile.
We're athletic. And we're athletic because we both stuck our legs out to see.
Basically, our tricycle ATV was at about a 45-degree angle toward the water. We stopped with our outer legs, my leg in the front, hers in the back, and I rolled over her phone and purse. I thought I had hurt Julie, but I hadn't. So the two of us caught ourselves, but had we not caught ourselves, we literally would have gone and toppled over into the water.
Maybe 6 inches from the water.
Maybe at most. And then, to top it all off, once we gained our composure, we brought the ATV upright again, and we just sat there and had a moment where we couldn't stop laughing. We were in shock. We realized then that everybody around the marina had seen us, and I'm talking tourists. The Australians we had seen earlier in the day also saw it from across the marina, across the dock, and then a whole group of older Greek gentlemen who were sitting there having their coffee and cigarettes had seen the whole thing unfold. Next thing I know, a Greek gentleman came up to us on his motorbike and asked me in Greek, "Este ndaxi, este kali." In other words, are you okay? Are you okay? And we just said, "Sí, imaste ndaxi." We're fine. So it was we laughed so hard about it. We laughed, and it's really hard on a podcast to even explain this. You really did have to be there. But
Lauren relaxed after that.
It took me almost killing us or dunking us, and I would have been liable for that whole tricycle ATV. But again, your husband Corey, and he's an engineer, says that those were outlawed a long time ago because they are fit from a physics engineering standpoint. They're really unsafe. So now we know why.
But we had so much fun that day. Even the near-death experience, we laughed so hard. I think that, I don't know. I mean,
we bonded over it.
We definitely bonded, but I don't know the last time I'd had such a deep belly laugh till that day, which probably says a lot about both of us. But we laughed so hard that we couldn't even look at each other for a good hour without busting out laughing.
But you know what's funny is I'm all about trying to blend into the local culture, speak the language, greet them in their language, tone it down because I'm so loud, tone it down a little bit, just be so culturally sensitive and immersive. And here I am looking like a total jack, ASS, and completely looking ridiculous and making us look like the quintessential idiotic U.S. American tourists. So, I really embarrassed us. But we got through it, and then we turned in the ATV that evening to Mr. Elias. I hope he doesn't find out what almost happened to his property, but we made it through. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's switch gears again. We're drawing to a close in a minute here, but you, Julie, you are really one of my most soulful, bohemian, free-spirited, lover of life kind of friends. That's why I asked you on the podcast. I see you as a very interesting, intriguing, colorful person. So that's how I describe you. But what does being colorful mean to you?
For me, it's seeing all the beauty around you. And it could be the bright flowers to the nice set of dishes at a thrift store. So to me, it's just there's beauty all around. You just need to open your eyes and look. And I feel like we get so busy in life that we just don't slow down and look at the things.
What do you think? How do you live your life on a daily basis colorfully?
Learning to take care of me so I can take care of others. And I know that's probably not colorful, but in the sense that I want my coffee and I'm going to put it in a bright colored coffee cup and I'm going to put all the froth and the cinnamon and it's going to have all the dimensions, which to me is colorful. And having the simple things that just bring me joy.
That's a good answer. And when I ask my guests this, I never mean for them to take it literally. I do mean it as a metaphorical thing because we all have different ideas of what it means to live colorfully. For me, even if I'm not traveling internationally, like this year, 2024, I probably won't be traveling very much internationally. I'm going to be kind of homebound. But to me, living colorfully is going and visiting here in Houston all of the different restaurants that we have around town from owners, from families around the world. We've got every ethnicity represented here, every type of food you can imagine. So that's how I'll have colorful experiences this year myself.
To me, I think go look at the blue bonnets in the fields or go pick flowers or do stuff.
But and be out in nature. In nature. So we're drawing to a close here. Are there any other experiences you can remember from Spetses that you would put on your recommendation list for people considering going there?
I mean, I definitely feel like go see the beaches. They're not our typical beach. I expected them to be big, long beaches, so it was kind of cool that they were little, tiny, more private beaches, which was nice. The food is unbelievable. Probably one of my favorite things was how friendly everybody was there. Mm-hmm. And me not knowing any Greek, they were very accommodating in the sense that I'm carrying around my phone with my little Google translator when I was without you. Yeah. And they would sit there and look at it, and I never felt dumb or anything with them. So to me, it was like I felt very welcoming and the love, and you could just see that regardless who we met or whatever. And to me, that meant a lot.
Yeah, to me, the Greeks remind me of with their hospitality, which they call philoxenia. Their level of hospitality is on par with your and my type of hospitality as Southerners that we have here in Texas and where I was born and raised in New Orleans. There's in the South and even some parts of Mississippi where I was also raised, there's a lot of hospitality. Yeah. So it was refreshing, I think, for us to really see that in full force anywhere we went.
Well, the one restaurant we went to that they kept bringing us food and we would tell them no, we're full, and they're like, the chef wants you to try this, and kept bringing more and more out, and we're like, we literally can eat no more.
So I will say this before we close. There are a couple of restaurant tips that I think everyone needs to know that I knew this before, but some of this, so this was a little bit new to you. But number one, Greeks, they take their time when they're eating. So they are not going to bring the bill to you for a very long time. Usually you will need to ask for the bill, and that is because they want to give you all the time that you need to sit and enjoy the meal over drinks, just let your food digest, visit with your family, have great conversations. So they're not trying to rush you out the door at all. That was so refreshing.
I love that. And I've been telling everybody about that. Like, we'll be personally with like family or different stuff and they're in a hurry. And I'm like, no, we're going to have a Greek dinner here. And they look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, no, we're going to sit here and we're going to have conversations. We're going to visit. We're going to chill and hang out. Nobody's in a hurry. The dishes can sit there. And to me, that was really neat. I know one night we were at dinner, and it was the one restaurant we went to several times, but they had the whole family over next to us. That was like 3 generations of family that you could tell. And to me, that was great to see. And I think they even had their dog at the restaurant with them, to see all of them laughing and talking. And it was kids from, elementary age all the way up. And to me, that was really neat to see the bond with the family, because we don't see that as much over here.
I agree with that. And also at restaurants, what you'll see sometimes, especially in the islands, more so than in the city of Athens, they will usually bring you some kind of dessert just complimentarily on the house. And I think that is very nice. They'll just bring something for you to try. Or if they like you, like I think that they appreciated that I was utilizing my Greek and speaking it to them. And Julie, you're so friendly. They appreciated all of that. And I think they did extra stuff for us, honestly.
Yeah.
Don't
I mean,
you
it was,
kinda
I
think?
do too. I think it was amazing. I feel like everywhere we went, though, people was like that with us, which was great.
One thing we didn't talk about was the ferry. We need to talk about taking the ferry from Athens to Spetses.
Oh, that was amazing.
I thought it was a great experience. It was a 3-hour ferry ride, and then it stopped at different islands on the way.
To let people off, but to see all the different islands and just kind of chill. So we both had like our books and we read and we hung out, and it was nice. You could get up and walk or whatever. It wasn't rough or rocky or anything. So
Well, that day it wasn't.
right, that day it wasn't.
It wasn't.
But then I did the baby ferry when I left by myself to go out, and that was cool. But that was a little more boat ferry.
That was a little boat taxi. So, well, I just want to thank you for really choosing me as your first international travel companion, and I want to thank you for your friendship. And I think a good way for us to close this podcast here is to talk about the fact that we're both in our 50s now. You're 50 and I'm 51. And some would say, oh, you're old, or life's over after 40. And you and I don't feel that way. Let's talk to people here who are contemplating a trip. And
I feel like life is just starting for us. I mean, that's how I feel. I feel like 50 is the new 20. And I remember being 20 thinking 50 was old. And now that I'm 50, I'm like, wow. But I want to live to 105. So I still have a whole other life to live.
You got a lot of time left. You have a lot of time.
I think you should travel. I mean, life is short. I mean, even me going to Greece wasn't practical for me to do. But personally, I'd said no to so many trips in my life because I was like, I can't do this. It's not the right time or whatever. And I was like, I couldn't do it again. So I challenge your listeners, if they want to take the trip or the vacation, just do it. Try it. Have the experience. It'll be well worth it.
I agree. And really, we were able to get good deals truly on our Airbnb, our guest house. We got really great deals. And we also chose a time in which to travel that was at the tail end. We were there late September, early October.
Because literally the island shut the day after we left.
A lot of it did. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It sure did. And so you can get really good plane tickets and lodging deals when you travel to places in the off season. And I've said this in other podcast episodes that a great time to travel to Greece is at the tail end of September. And last year I was there the entire month of October. And the tourists have left for the most part. And you just don't have to wait in long lines, and it's not super crowded. So
yeah. And the weather was perfect.
The weather was amazing. It was nice and mild. Now the water was a little cold. If you're from a southern climate like we are, you might find that water's a little bit cold, but it was great. Well, Julie, I love you, and I thank you. I thank you for being here. And to all of my listeners, I want to encourage you this upcoming week. I want to challenge you to go visit my Instagram, because Julie and I are going to be putting up some photos from our trip to Spetses. I know she has a huge catalog of photography and videography that we'll be sharing, and I'll add some of mine as well. But my Instagram, you guys, is www.instagram.com/@LFBcolor. I could have just said that my handle is @LFBcolor. I'm sorry. And Julie, what is your Instagram handle?
It is Live Life Lehmann.
Do you want to spell that?
Live Life and then LEHMANN.
Perfect. So be sure to check Julie's Instagram and my Instagram this week. And also, I'm very interested in getting feedback from you listeners on guests you'd like to have, questions that you have for me, topics that you want me to cover. I want to keep this podcast informative, interesting, intriguing, and I want you to learn something each time you tune in. So, until next time, everyone, live colorfully, and we'll see you soon. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Coloring My Way Across the Globe. I hope that you've enjoyed the conversation, and we would love to stay connected with you throughout the week. The best way to connect is by subscribing to our newsletter at www.lfbcolor.com. That's www.L as in Lauren, F as in Frank, B as in boy, color, COLOR.com. Also, you may find us on Instagram using the same handle, LFBcolor, for the latest stories, podcast guest profiles, travel photography, language learning diaries, and my own colorful art. Hope to see you there, friends. Thank you again.